Well, good evening, everyone. It is, let's see, Thursday evening here. Wanted to get on to a quick tropical update video. We do have Tropical Storm Franklin here north of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. This is going to move off into the open Atlantic, possibly impact Bermuda, but again, probably more of a fish storm going to be out in the open waters and not a big impact. But what we are watching is kind of this area of storminess here across the Caribbean and Central America. Do want to talk a little bit about that and look at the National Hurricane Center has outlined about a 50% probability that we do get a tropical system that develops there and then tends to move off to the northeast over the coming week towards possibly the eastern Gulf of Mexico and maybe even Florida. So it does look like there is a good chance that we could see a storm there moving into next week. So do want to take a look at that and kind of look at what some of the models are showing and some of the discrepancies that we're dealing with right now. So first and foremost here, this is our water vapor imagery of the Atlantic Ocean right now. A couple things you can see. Obviously, we have this big trough here across the northeastern Atlantic. You can see that spin there. We do have, again, we have our tropical storm Franklin here north of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico. Franklin is going to meander a little bit to the northeast and then start to move more north-northwest, possibly impacting Bermuda here over the coming days. So definitely if you're have interest in Bermuda, definitely want to pay attention to that storm. But likely going to be mainly off into the Atlantic Ocean, not going to threaten the eastern coast of the U.S. But again, what we are watching is this storminess here across the Western Caribbean. What we can notice here and kind of what this is called, you can see a little bit of a spin here in the atmosphere across the Gulf of Mexico and just an overall storminess here across much of Central America. In the weather world, this is called the Central American Gyre. And basically, what that means is that you typically get kind of a low pressure system that kind of just meanders here around the landmass of Central America. And at times, that can spin up some tropical systems. And certainly there are examples of that. Probably the most important and impactful example was back in 2020. Let's see, 2020, I think, Hurricane Michael that ended up being a Category 5 hurricane when it made landfall in the Florida Panhandle originated out of this Central American gyre here. So this is something that we see kick off typically on average about one storm per year. And some of the weather models are starting to hint at this storminess here starting to develop over the coming days here across the Western Caribbean, somewhere maybe in this area here, and then gradually moving off to the northeast towards the Gulf of Mexico and possibly Florida. So that is what we're looking at here today. And that's what we can see kind of popping up here on the water vapor satellite. Now, when we look at the National Hurricane Center, they have outlined this area here, this disturbance 3, for now even a 60% chance of development over the next 7 days. So we can see that again, kind of over Central America now, going to move off to the north into the Western Caribbean, and then eventually potentially developing and moving into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Again, we have Franklin out here currently, and then we do have a couple areas to watch again over the open Atlantic, not any real threats to land at all. So when we do look at a couple of the weather models, this is one specific model here. This is the ECENS data model, and this gives us an idea of where those low-level kind of lower level systems are within the Atlantic Ocean. And so as we move forward in time here, if I start this loop, what we can see is we do have this consistent hint of a couple different kind of low pressure systems, but pretty consistently in this Western Caribbean area here. And again, let's focus on this storm since this would probably have the impact on the US. And watch here as I move forward in time, you're going to see this gradually, pretty consistently move off to the north and northeast here over the coming days based on this model run right here. So again, I'll go ahead and start that again and watch it as it starts to meander off to the north and northeast towards Florida in most cases. So that is definitely what we're looking at again with this particular model. Now, interesting to note that the GFS, which is considered the American model, when we look at what it is projecting, it really struggles to develop any type of a consistent kind of low level circulation there. And so when we look at this vorticity, and then I put it into motion here. Again, you'll see Tropical Storm Franklin right here, but watch this area over here. There's a little bit of a hint. You kind of see the wind barbs. You see a little bit of color here. It tries to develop right over the Yucatan, but really never does it and kind of gets stretched out. So this American GFS model, again, doesn't actually develop any storm here in the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. So there is disagreement between the models. Now, when we go and we look at the European model, and we look at the same thing again, we have that consistency with Tropical Storm Franklin, but watch right here. We can see it does develop a circulation, and then that circulation moves north, starts to strengthen, and does look like it could be possibly a hurricane hitting kind of here along that curved area of the Florida coast. So it really is up in the air given that there is disagreement between the different models. But I think we're seeing enough agreement between a couple of the models to show that there is a likelihood that that Central American gyre does spin up a low-level circulation and possibly a tropical cyclone. And this would be mainly over the next week or so. So probably going into kind of the early to middle parts of that next week before Labor Day. That's when we're going to have to be watching this area very, very closely. So again, still a little too early to know with any certainty now, but does look like there are hints that we could see something spinning up here and then moving into the Gulf of Mexico and likely moving to the northeast towards Florida. So again, wanted to hop on, do this update. Hopefully this was helpful in giving us an idea of a potential impact to the Gulf Coast here over the next week or so before Labor Day. And again, I'll certainly be posting more updates as we move forward in time and maybe get a little bit more clarity here. So hope everybody has a good Monday, and I'll see you back for the next video.